Hi, I'm Micah Halpern. Thank you for joining me today as I do some thinking out loud. Our first segment is called Background Briefing. The first thing I've been thinking about is Iran. We need to recognize that Iran is not a backward society. It is an advanced and highly cultured society. For instance, Iran is the third largest publisher of books in the world. Independently of that, they are also the largest publisher of religious books in the world. Iran always has a plan, sometimes several plans. The point is, Iran operates on multiple levels, multiple diabolical levels many times. Iran and the E3, along with the United States, engaged in talks. The E3 is a whittled down version of the P5+1. It's composed of the United Kingdom, France, and Germany. These talks, as did the previous talks, centered on the lifting or erasing and easing of sanctions imposed on Iran, sanctions that have put a stranglehold on Iran's economy. Iran is hopeful that talks will succeed and hopeful that sanctions will be lifted. Their optimism is understandable. There seems to be a movement in that direction, and that's because there are indications that the United States is capitulating on the issue of Iran's nuclear enrichment. Then the lifting of these sanctions is exactly that. That's one level, one plan, unfolding in Vienna. And now another unfolds. As nuclear dialogue drones on in Vienna, Iran used military drones to attack American soldiers headquartered in the base in Syria on the Iraqi border. This was not Iran's first drone strike against the United States presence in Syria, nor will it be their last. Many people in the region, including but not exclusively Iran, characterize Western presence in the Middle East as an invasion and a colonial force. And so, as a result, the anti-Western flank is intent on excising every Western military troop from the traditional Islamic lands. Ostensible reason for the timing of this drone attack was the second anniversary of the assassination of Qasem Soleimani by the United States. Soleimani was the head of the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps, the IRGC. Al-Quds Force was killed while traveling in his motorcade after landing in the Baghdad airport in Iraq. The leader of all Iranian military and terror attacks outside Iran. His imprimatur was on attacks in Syria, Lebanon, Yemen, Saudi Arabia, Iraq, Gaza, and even in Europe. Traveling in the motorcade together with Soleimani, and was also killed, was his Iraqi lieutenant, Abu Mahdi al-Muhandis, deputy leader of Hasham al-Shaibi, a coalition of pro-Iranian militia in Iraq. Soleimani's assassination was composed by many moving parts. His arrival at the Baghdad airport and departure on his motorcade was confirmed by Israeli intelligence in real time. Then President Trump personally gave the okay for this targeted assassination, also in real time. I'm going into specific details here about the assassination and the anniversary because Iran went to great lengths to turn it into an international moment. Iranian leadership sent 11 letters to 9 countries asking them either to place on trial or to extradite to Iran 127 that they claim are responsible for the January 3rd assassination. The Fars media, which owns and is owned by the Iranian Revolutionary Corps, posted a story that outlines this unusual request of the Iranian Justice Ministry. Fars news piece also reported that not just the Minister of Justice of Iran, but the signatures of Iraqi leadership were also affixed to the letters. While the report did not mention any of the 127 names, it would be fair to assume that the name Donald Trump, the U.S. president who ordered the assassination, would be top on the list. In addition, Mike Pompeo, former Secretary of State, would also certainly be a prominent spot on the list. Extraditing or trying 127 people to please Iran sounds like a very big ask. But it's typically Iranian. Iran thinks big. In a mosque, Iranian President Ibrahim Raisi gave a memorial speech praising Soleimani. And in the sermon, he promised revenge on Trump unless he is tried and convicted for the targeting of Soleimani. Raisi said, and this is a quote, "The aggressor and the main assassin, the then President of the United States, must face justice and retribution," unquote. Raisi also mentioned U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo, as well as other criminals. Soleimani was a popular and well-known Iranian leader. Millions of Iranians were reported to have attended his funeral. But that support was not wall-to-wall. Soleimani represented the establishment, and much of Iran's younger generation has begun a movement to counterbalance traditional religious leadership in Iran. On the very day dedicated to Soleimani's memorials, a statue was erected in Shaharakhord, located in southwestern Iran. Shaharakhord is a city of 200,000 people. Later that day in the evening, that statue of Soleimani was lit on fire and burned. Video of the fire, uploaded onto Twitter, went viral internationally. The arsonists were officially condemned. Clearly, however, some Iranians did not and do not like Soleimani. Official Iranian policy is to embrace Soleimani. Official policy is to condemn the West, especially the United States. But there is another growing reality in Iran. We do not know how big their group is, but it is a major swath of Iran. That group rejects the official line. They are starting to stand up, act up, and speak out. I hope, like those they oppose, they have a plan. Coming up, points of view. First up is a column from the JTA. It is by Andrew Lapin. It was published on November 30th, 2021. The title is, "The New Owner of San Diego Jewish News Site Has No Qualms About Blurring Journalism and PR." The column describes a controversial situation in which the owner of a news site has no qualms about pushing ideas he is paid to push. Objectivity goes right out the window. This is how Lapin starts. Jacob Camaras got the San Diego Jewish World for an absolute steal, $1 to be exact. The journalist and public relations executive bought the publication for that ceremonial price from its previous owner, publisher Don Harrison, who founded the online outlet in 2009 and was looking to step down from day-to-day operations. Harrison will become publisher emeritus. Camaras views his stewardship of the site as one important way to contribute to his adopted local San Diego Jewish community. Though he was born in Brooklyn, his wife Megan's family is from San Diego area. They now live there. This is just background. Continuing on, Lapin explains the real dilemma, combining PR and news. Lapin continues, but Camaras brings something of a non-traditional mindset to the publication, unlike most professional journalists who seek to draw a clear line of their work audiences between their own work and their public relations. Camaras will combine both. Quote, "I always kind of kept my hands in both worlds, in the PR and journalism, and that's going to continue to be the case," Camaras told the Jewish Telegraph Agency about his new role. "I believe that the two fields or subfields within the same space have more symbiotic relationship than one would think." Lapin quotes Camaras illustrating the very crux of the issue. He writes, "I think some journalists would look at PR reps and have an attitude." He said, but added, "I kind of think we're all in the same team here in Jewish journalism, and that includes PR. Nearly all local Jewish publications have struggled for a viable economic model in the last decade, with their financial woes intensifying during COVID-19 epidemic. Boston's 118-year-old Jewish Advocate ceased operations entirely last year in March. The 75-year-old Arizona Jewish Post did the same. Other Jewish news organizations have been reinventing themselves. The 60-year-old Canadian Jewish News shut down in 2013, restarted operations within a year, and in August has relaunched as an all-digital news site. And the New York Jewish Week joined JTA as part of 70 Faces Media in January. Camaras says that had he not stepped in, the Jewish community in San Diego would not have a Jewish media, period. Lapin concludes by quoting Camaras. At the end of the day, Camaras said, keeping the lights on at the Jewish World was the most important part of the equation, regardless of how that happens. I did not want to see this product go by the wayside. True, there is an important service that Camaras has and he serves. The problem is, as I see it, and it's critical, what happens if your client gets into trouble? Can you cover the situation? What happens if your client has abused power, sexual abuse, financial scandal? What do you do? That's the question. Next up is a column from the Allgemeiner, and it's penned by PR guru Ron Tarosian. He's not writing about this, he's writing about Israel. It was published on January 7, 2022. The first two sentences are actually by the editor, and then this is actually from Tarosian's book. The column begins. This week, Israel's foreign minister, Yair Lapid, warned that Israel will face intense campaigns to label it an apartheid state in 2022. Against that backdrop, public relations executive Ron Tarosian released the following book excerpt from his best-selling PR book for immediate release, which is especially relevant against the backdrop of Lapid's comments. Now we hear Tarosian's voice. The state of Israel is, for me, a personal passion. And with love, I will say that Israel does a horrible job when it comes to PR. The simple message that Israel is a tiny democratic country surrounded by murderous despots doesn't get through, not to governments, the media, or the public. Case in point, many people don't understand the difference in size between all the Arab states and the Jewish state. The total area of the state of Israel is 8,019 square miles. And it's surrounded by Arab nations, Egypt, Lebanon, Syria, Jordan, and the Mediterranean Sea. Egypt alone covers 386,662 square miles. Tarosian continues and explains the dangers of bad PR strategy. He writes, Israel puts itself in danger because of its flawed public relations and communications work. In contrast, terrorist organizations, Hamas, Hezbollah, and certain Arab nations have hired PR agencies to lobby them in the press and on the world stage. Terror groups engage reporters and journalists, share meals with them, drink with them, and win their favor. Israel's PR has gotten better in recent years, but it can still do better at framing the debate by using more spokespeople who are fluent in the English language. Israel regularly sends diplomats who don't speak the native language to other countries. That means there is still much that can be done to fight and influence. It's a question of shaping concepts and speaking in terms of metaphors that the world understands. Tarosian lays out 5 essential points Israel must do to make their point and win their PR battle. They are: 1. Make your own case. Be proactive and passionate in educational PR efforts. 2. Argue on your strengths, not your weaknesses. Harmful framing by the media or others can be handled effectively only with counter-framing, presenting your narrative without debating the negative frame, thereby giving it credibility or trying to justify yourself against it. 3. Consistent and united PR. There is nothing more counterproductive and irritating to a spokesperson than having to compete with a colleague who is operating with a different message. 4. Act with rapidity. Israel is agile, dynamic. It can use this to its advantage. And 5. Engage social media frequently. Social media should be used on a daily basis and in a positive way. In the long run, it's the daily actions and a brand that determine its overall image. The daily blog post helps build a reputation and do regular speaking engagements and consistent outreach and public events. Tarosian is correct, but one should recognize that even if Israel were to totally execute this plan, it would only improve Israel's PR stance. The important improvement, no question, but not enough to solve the bigger problem. That's for another conversation. Coming up, commentary through cartoons where pictures tell the story. I want to show you 7 cartoons and memes and headlines today. The first meme is a marvelous play on the terrible misuse of words and spelling. It pokes fun by punning with a great misuse of a word. Someone tweeted that they had just baked some cinnamon buns. I replied, just like the ones grammar used to make? That's funny. Next up is a short clip of a baby who can't speak and is pretending to read gibberish in gibberish. The caption reads, new CDC guidelines. It's so true. Sometimes, try as we might, we just can't understand what the CDC wants us to do. Gary Varvel draws this next cartoon. It's a much-used theme. Joe Biden and Vladimir Putin are sitting at a game table. Putin is playing chess, and Biden is playing checkers. The caption reads, World Chess Match. Now, a tweet from the comedian Elon Gold. Gold is making fun of the French, who are notoriously, historically Jew haters. Gold writes, this new variant comes from France. I'm not worried about it, as it probably hates Jews. That's funny. This next cartoon is a perfect depiction of parental frustration with Zoom learning. A father and mother are watching their child at the computer. The screen reads, "Remote learning." The father comments to the mother, "Today's lesson must be about oxymorons." This next meme is about diets. There's a lot of humor in the world about dieting, and the more one gets into diets, the more one sees the humor. And this one is very funny. The meme reads, "Diet Day 1. It's a journal. Diet Day 1. I've removed all the bad food from the house. It was delicious." This last meme is a wonderful depiction of the current COVID situation. One chimp says to the other chimp, "They're saying we can have gatherings of up to 8 people without issues." The second chimp responds, "I don't even know 8 people without issues." That's funny. In a moment, more of my own perspective and a few predictions. Muslims in America have started to respond to the Muslim who took 4 Jews hostage in their synagogue in Texas. The most significant of the responses came from a Muslim professor who teaches at the Divinity School at Duke University in North Carolina. Abdullah T. Antepli said the time has come for Muslims to stand up and realize that this culture of hatred must be addressed. He saw this act of terror as a moral call for action for the soul of Islam and Muslims to address senseless blind hatred towards Jews. For too long, there has been a deafening silence after many acts of violence against Jews in the United States and around the world. The time has come for Muslim leadership to step up and condemn the evil of these acts. Thank you, Professor Antepli, for taking the leadership. It was a very brave and bold move. David Bateman, a major Republican donor from Utah, claimed that Pope Francis was a secret Jewish agent. Bateman qualified this statement saying, "The Pope has love for the Jewish people." That wasn't all he had to say about it. On Instagram, Bateman wrote, "My heart breaks for the Jews' multi-millennial plight, wherein they were driven from country to country, robbed, beaten, denied voting rights, and exterminated over and over again." Bateman continued, "My beef is with the Kabbalistic, central banking, secret society Jews, not the amazing, humble, and industrious Jewish people." The qualification to his statement makes Bateman's comments even worse. According to his statements, he has a problem with Jewish bankers, meaning wealthy, secret society Jews, but no problem with humble working class Jews. I find it hard to believe. Either way, shame on you, David Bateman. Hezbollah from Lebanon hosted a conference supporting the rebels in Saudi Arabia. Challenging Saudi Arabia in Lebanon, when the majority of Lebanon's support comes from places like Saudi Arabia, and they want Saudi Arabia to continue to support them and help rebuild Lebanon, seems a rather counterintuitive thing. It's gall. Lebanon is in dire need for help right now. We've spoken about this. And this move by Hezbollah speaks volumes. A large part of the internal Lebanese tension is due to actions of Hezbollah. Hezbollah's support for the rebels in Saudi Arabia was the reason Saudi Arabia recalled its ambassador from Lebanon and banned all imports from Lebanon. Throughout the conference, Hezbollah officials repeatedly told Saudi Arabia to stop bullying. Everyone in attendance at the conference was allied with, you guessed it, Iran. Iranian support was their common denominator. Tensions between the United States and Russia are increasing, and there are several issues of contention, and Israel has entered into the dialogue of one of these issues, Iran. Israeli Prime Minister Naftali Bennett had a substantial phone conversation recently with Russian President Vladimir Putin. They spoke about Iran, especially the Iranian nuclear program, and the talks taking place in Vienna about Iran's nuke plan. Bennett told Putin also that they spoke about security in the Middle East, about Syria and about Lebanon. They spoke about continued cooperation between their two countries. Bennett made it very clear to Putin that Israel was carefully watching Iran. He made it clear also that no matter what was decided in Vienna, It will not stop Israel from striking Iran if they cross the line. At the end of the call, Putin invited Bennett and his wife to visit Russia. Hamas posted a video claiming that Israel is using killer dolphins to attack Hamas frogmen. The video claims that they captured one of the killer dolphins along with its weapons. The video shows the weapon, which was used to kill a Hamas frogman in May. During a recent conflict in May last year, Hamas contends that the dolphins were a harness similar to the Russian device that they use on dolphins. The device is a gun of some sort, which is shot by remote control and the joystick by people watching on a computer through a camera. Israel's not commented on the story. It should be noted, however, that militaries around the world have used dolphins for many and varied purposes. A waterspout has been spotted off Israel's Mediterranean coast, off the coast of Ashdod, actually. A waterspout is a tornado-like funnel that erupts over the water and moves. It's powered by the water underneath it. Like a tornado, it sucks everything around it in, like the water, and that's what powers it. Anything in its way gets blown up. Because of this waterspout is in the ocean or in the Mediterranean Sea here, the only real danger it brings is to boats and ships that might be in its way, so they can get out of the way. The waterspouts are created by very warm water hitting cold water, or actually also hitting environmentally cold air. The good news is that as soon as the waterspout is close to land, when it hits land, the waterspout loses its power and dies. It's gone. The end. We've been thinking out loud about a lot today. Now that you know what I've been thinking, let me know what you're thinking. Email me at micah@jbstv.org. Tweet me at Micah Halpern. Tell me what you think. Before we end, let me leave you with one piquante piece of information. Earlier, I discussed the United States assassination of Soleimani. Now, Iran sees the United States and its targeted attack as illegal and a violation of international law. It is not. I want that to be clear. It is not a violation of international law. It is also the attack, the assassination of Soleimani was not an act of vengeance or of retribution. The move was an act of self-defense by the United States, and that is legal under international law. Soleimani was responsible for many, many deaths, that's true, but he was also planning future attacks. And under Jewish law, it is also legal to do that. The Talmud in the Gemara of Sanhedrin gives a dictum in Perek Chelek. Ba'al l'horgecha hashkem l'horgo. It says when someone comes to kill you, you get up earlier and kill them first. This is one of the most essential rabbinic laws for a preemptive strike as a form of self-defense. It's exactly how Israel and the IDF behave, and this dictum is exactly what the Jewish state teaches its military leaders and its strategists. Thank you for thinking out loud with me, Micah Halpern. Let's think out loud again next week on JBS.